Hello, everyone. Thank you to be with us also in the afternoon session. And this is a moderated sessions where we will organize a dialogical and conversation in 3 main blocks. Each blocks will deal with a different theme, but all these themes are interrelated because we are going to deals and talk about the paradigms, the models of the One Health framework, where we are all inside working in, and going through the specific topic that the project Feldenkrais4Life wanted to focus on, concerning the fibromyalgia and the chronic pain. And the last block, the third and last block, will deal with a specific point, a specific topic that concerns voice. So I'm happy to introduce you our special guests, and I start from Sandra Coecke, who followed this morning, already met her, but Sandra Coecke represents European Commission's Joint Research Center Digital Health, and we are very happy and proud to have opened this dialogue with you, because also you are very skilled in leading multi-stakeholder teams on emerging health threats and the One Health approach. So it will be very important to have your point of view. Then I introduce you Mattis Appleqvist and Ivo Mentens. They represent Feldenkrais Education. That is a very nice initiative that our Feldenkrais board was able to produce in the last 2 years in Europe. Ivo Mentens is a Feldenkrais trainers working in different continents, and he's a co-founder of Feldenkrais Education Initiative. So we are very happy to ask you how this initiative was born and all what is interesting for our conversation. So I will start with the first block that is titled From Concept to Practice, Evolving Paradigms in Health, Prevention and Care. Why it's important? Because this morning we closed with this statement. We are so used to work and to cope with our daily work as Feldenkrais practitioners or somatic discipline practitioners, but we belong to a much wider and broader world where regulations and interrogations on what kind of paradigms approach we want to keep makes really the difference. So this first recording is from Nicola Barsotti, and Nicola Barsotti is an osteopath and a co-founder of a similar Italian initiatives called MIBES Academy. And this is an initiative, it's a virtual platform addressed to anyone working on the healthcare, prevention, rehabilitations, and therapy, and wants to give its contribution to educate and learn and yes, educate professionals able to work in a transdisciplinary way. So Nicola Barsotti, co-founder and osteopath and teachers of a paradigm that now he will explain us, that is the PsychoNeuroEndocrine model paradigm, and what it matters with somatic disciplines. So we can send the recording.
Buongiorno a tutti e bentrovati, grazie per avermi invitato e per avermi dato la possibilità di parlarvi di PNEI, quindi di PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunologia. Io mi chiamo Nicola Barsotti, sono un osteopata, vivo e lavoro a Firenze in Italia e sempre a Firenze sono docente presso il corso di laurea in osteopatia proprio all'Università degli Studi di Firenze e svolgo anche la mia attività didattica in diversi master universitari che hanno sempre come tema la PNEI, quindi la PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunologia, in varie università italiane. È necessario introdurre il concetto di paradigma scientifico, che fu introdotto come termine da Thomas Kuhn, un grandissimo epistemologo del secolo scorso, che ci ha messo in evidenza come la scienza non è mai progredita in modo lineare con il consenso di tutti, ma attraverso strappi radicali e repentini con quello che è il pensiero dominante. Il modello biopsicosociale che fu introdotto nel 1977 dal professor George Engel su un articolo pubblicato su Science che ha fatto la storia della medicina. Lui era sia un medico internista che uno psicologo e, come si vede dall'immagine, in pieno contesto riduzionistico, lui dice che, guardate, non possiamo ridurre la patologia soltanto ad una causa biologica. Certo, questa esiste, ma noi dobbiamo tenere in considerazione anche le componenti psicologiche e sociali. Più queste tre sfere che vediamo nell'immagine sono in equilibrio, più la persona è in uno stato di equilibrio. Più queste tre sfere si sbilanciano e più è facile che possa comparire una patologia. E mette in luce quelli che sono i limiti del modello biomedico dominante. Intanto ridurre la complessità della vita a determinati semplici, quindi il riduzionismo. Dall'altro separare corpo e mente. Ultimo, ridurre tutta la complessità della vita di un essere vivente a formule chimico-matematiche, quindi il cosiddetto fisicalismo. Oggi, detto in termini più moderni, il concetto di approccio biopsicosociale è stato tradotto col concetto di esposoma, cioè lo stato di salute e di malattia è dato da una pluralità di fattori esterni e interni che costantemente interagiscono e che ci permettono appunto di gestire il nostro stato di salute oppure di andare incontro a determinati tipi di patologie. Ecco, su queste basi nasce la PNEI, quindi nasce dal paradigma biopsicosociale introdotto da Engel e dalla visione epistemologica di Thomas Kuhn. Qui nell'immagine vedete Francesco Bottaccioli, che è il padre della PNEI, colui che ha proprio coniato il termine di PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunologia. E che cos'è questa? È una nuova disciplina che studia le relazioni bidirezionali tra la psiche e i sistemi fisiologici. Quindi in un nuovo framework, in una nuova cornice, vengono integrate tutte le conoscenze che si sono sviluppate dagli anni 30 in poi nell'ambito dell'endocrinologia, dell'immunologia e delle neuroscienze. Quindi fondamentalmente cerca di interpretare gli stati di salute e di malattia in una nuova visione, dove i vari sistemi sono tutti interconnessi l'uno con l'altro e dove le componenti biologiche e psicologiche interagiscono costantemente. Quindi, grazie a questa nuova visione, possono essere gettate le basi per nuovi approcci per la prevenzione e la promozione della salute e per la cura delle più comuni malattie, soprattutto quelle di tipo cronico. Quindi, partendo dalla visione di Thomas Kuhn, la PNEI non è una nuova specializzazione, non è neanche una specializzazione biopsicologica, né una super specializzazione, ma proprio un nuovo paradigma fisiopatologico e clinico e ha in sé tutte le caratteristiche di una rivoluzione paradigmatica, cioè il mantenere tutte le conoscenze che sono state acquisite nel corso del tempo, all'interno però di un nuovo framework, di una nuova interpretazione. Quindi possiamo dire che la PNEI è un paradigma sistemico a base molecolare. E qui ne vediamo un'ulteriore sintesi, no? Si vede come la PNEI studia le relazioni bidirezionali tra i vari sistemi fisiologici, sistema nervoso, endocrino, immunitario, poi la comunicazione bidirezionale tra questi sistemi fisiologici e la psiche, e la comunicazione bidirezionale tra questi sistemi fisiologici, la psiche e la struttura del corpo, quindi ossa, muscoli e tessuto connettivo. Ecco, vi ho messo quelli che sono stati grandi ricercatori nell'ambito della complessità. Sicuramente Hans Selye, con la sua introduzione al concetto di sindrome di adattamento generale, attraverso gli studi sui topolini che ha fatto, è stato colui che è considerato il padre dell'apnea, colui che ha scoperto l'asse dello stress e soprattutto ha scoperto che l'organismo risponde in modo sistemico di fronte ad un particolare stress. Di base, in questa nuova visione di complessità, non abbiamo una molecola che ha una sola funzione. Ecco, questo dipende, l'azione della molecola, dal contesto in cui si trova e ogni organo del nostro corpo è avvolto da un sistema neurale, da una rete immunitaria e a sua volta ogni organo è in grado di rilasciare tutta una serie di ormoni. Questa è un'immagine che va a semplificare appunto quello che è il concetto di attivazione sistemica sotto stress. Qui vediamo un cervello, quindi facciamo un esempio, siamo sotto stress perché stiamo vivendo una particolare emozione. Bene, che cosa succede? Ha visto come uno stress psicologico, P, attivi il cervello, quindi la N, attraverso questa attivazione vengono rilasciati una serie di ormoni, quindi si attiva il sistema endocrino, l'attivazione periferica degli ormoni andrà a influenzare le cellule immunitarie, quindi il sistema I, quindi ecco costruito l'acronimo PNEI, e il sistema I andrà a sua volta a influenzare sistema endocrino, sistema nervoso e psiche. Quindi vediamo come ci sia una risposta generale da parte dell'organismo sotto uno stress, che in questo caso è psicologico, ma può essere anche uno stress fisico. Quindi con il cambio di secolo e con il riconoscimento della complessità, il dibattito epistemologico è cambiato. Cioè, oggi è chiaro che non possiamo più poggiare su certezze assolute e su metodi infallibili. E semplicemente con il cambio di paradigma, con gli stessi esperimenti di prima, le cose, diciamo così, i ricercatori hanno trovato e hanno scoperto nuovi settori di ricerca. Nella neurobiologia si sono scoperti i network cerebrali, la sinapsi complessa e modulabile, la plasticità cerebrale, la neurogenesi. Nell'ambito della biologia abbiamo iniziato a parlare di epigenetica, di meccanobiologia. Sempre più si sta parlando di PNEI e poi di centralità e importanza delle terapie corporee. Perché? Perché fondamentalmente il tessuto connettivo è l'ambiente all'interno del quale avvengono gli scambi metabolici e quindi i vari sistemi comunicano appunto l'uno con l'altro. Bene, con queste premesse velocemente andiamo a vedere due cose in relazione all'apnea e il settore discipline corporee. Allora, intanto partirei con questa immagine, no? Che è l'immagine medievale di Firenze. Io ho immaginato i vari settori delle discipline corporee, che è un settore, un dedalo, ce ne sono tantissime, come delle piccole città medievali, chiuse all'interno delle proprie mura e che non avevano un linguaggio che gli permetteva di confrontarsi con le altre città e soprattutto con il mondo scientifico. Anzi, poi spesso e volentieri all'interno delle proprie città c'erano quartieri che mettevano in conflitto un quartiere rispetto all'altro, quindi con una grandissima divisione. Anche qui, con il cambio di secolo, cambia la visione e il settore delle discipline corporee sta vivendo una fase che viene definita, a mio avviso, di tipo rinascimentale, cioè si stanno riscoprendo i testi classici, si stanno riscoprendo le basi fondamentali della scienza per creare un terreno che possa permettere la comunicazione tra le varie discipline corporee e poi tra le discipline corporee e tutti gli altri settori della medicina e anche della psicologia. E esiste proprio una filosofia specifica legata alle discipline corporee. Beh, innanzitutto, quando noi parliamo di discipline corporee, dobbiamo tenere in considerazione che queste fanno parte di un sistema olistico. Sono fondamentali appunto per sviluppare un sé spirituale. Questo dall'antica Grecia, passando per Nietzsche, fino ad arrivare alla fenomenologia, il corpo, dal corpo emerge la coscienza. E la coscienza è un qualcosa che va a direzionare il corpo per andare a creare un qualcosa di superiore. Foucault insieme a dicevano una cosa fondamentale, che la conoscenza è prima di tutto un'azione. E l'azione è una capacità che noi abbiamo di muoverci all'interno del mondo e quindi di adattarci. E se ci pensiamo bene, le nostre qualità umane, le nostre caratteristiche personali, l'intelletto, l'immaginazione, la creatività, la percezione, l'amore, la compassione, quelli che sono i nostri valori, beh, ecco, li esprimiamo attraverso un gesto, attraverso un movimento corporeo. Il più alto principio etico e morale, beh, ha soltanto valore se può essere espresso attraverso un comportamento estremamente chiaro e definito. Ma se ci pensiamo all'agricoltura, all'industria, alla tecnologia, alla letteratura, le arti, le scienze, quindi se ci pensiamo bene, tutta la nostra civiltà sono il prodotto di azioni, di interazioni, di comunicazioni, di comportamento, e questi sono dati appunto dalla capacità di muoverci nello spazio attraverso un sistema orchestrato di movimento muscoloscheletrico. All'interno del paradigma PNEI, nel settore delle discipline corporee, rientra sempre il nostro Hans Selye. Beh, lui, oltre a parlare di sindrome di adattamento generale, parla anche di sindrome di adattamento locale. Beh, sicuramente tutti noi abbiamo aree del corpo che sono più o meno rigide, sono più o meno infiammate, che non ci permettono di fare movimenti in un certo modo. Bene, queste aree che sono localmente bloccate sono aree dove i tessuti sono più infiammati, presentano un'infiammazione cronica, c'è un'alterazione della circolazione, c'è una alterazione di quelli che sono i meccanismi di regolazione a livello locale. Bene, per Selye queste sindromi di adattamento locali vengono mantenute e sono presenti in ognuno di noi in varie aree del corpo. Quando incominciano a essere eccessive e il corpo non riesce più a gestirle a livello locale, attraverso una comunicazione che adesso non sto a spiegare, che è bottom up, quindi dalla periferia del corpo, questi stimoli vanno ad attivare una sindrome di adattamento generale. Ed ecco spiegato perché a volte un piccolo intervento chirurgico, un piccolo tamponamento, a un certo punto creano delle risposte sistemiche generali nei nostri pazienti e cominciano appunto le persone a dirci che incominciano ad avere disturbi di alterazione del sonno, degli stati emotivi e quant'altro, perché esiste una correlazione diretta tra alterazioni locali del nostro corpo e invece attivazione sistemica dell'organismo. Una pubblicazione che abbiamo fatto nel 2021 e si vede come sotto stress si attivano gli assi dello stress, in totale sono 3, e vedete questi assi dello stress vanno ad attivare specifiche cellule immunitarie alla periferia. Queste cellule immunitarie dove si attiveranno? All'interno della fascia, cioè del tessuto connettivo che avvolge tutto il nostro corpo, avvolge vari muscoli, avvolge vari organi del nostro corpo. Queste cellule immunitarie rilasceranno nell'ambiente tutta una serie di molecole che andranno a trasformare il tessuto connettivo in un tessuto connettivo fibroso. E questa è la dimostrazione appunto di come uno stress psicologico vada ad alterare quella che è la struttura del nostro corpo, andando a favorire la comparsa di rigidità, di difficoltà di movimento, fino appunto poi alla comparsa di veri e propri dolori. Ci spiega perché sotto stress cronico ci può essere un'infiammazione che porta ad atrofia dei muscoli e dei tendini, a fibrosi degli organi, a osteoporosi, a fratture, a ritenzione di liquidi, a aumento dell'infiammazione a livello locale e anche crescita degli adipociti. Uno stress di tipo psicologico può produrre tutto questo a livello fisico. Come questa donna che sta facendo yoga, quindi sta facendo ginnastica, attraverso il suo movimento va a stirare quello che si vede qua, è la muta del tessuto connettivo di del proprio tessuto connettivo. Qui vediamo quindi una comunicazione bottom up attraverso il movimento del corpo, stimolo dei recettori che andranno a influenzare il nostro cervello e quindi le informazioni che arrivano al cervello andranno a favorire poi la regolazione del sistema endocrini, dei sistemi nervosi e del sistema immunitario. Grazie ai lavori di Donald Ingberg, che vedete qui nell'immagine, professore di Harvard, bene, grazie ai suoi lavori sulla meccanobiologia si è scoperto che i movimenti del corpo hanno un effetto su tutte le cellule del nostro organismo di tipo meccanochimico e meccanomeccanico. E quindi attraverso i movimenti del nostro corpo noi andiamo a stirare questa muta fasciale che andrà a influenzare l'apertura o la chiusura del DNA. E quindi avrò una modulazione delle funzioni di tipo epigenetico proprio su base meccanica. E per Thomas Myers, questa trama fasciale che noi vediamo si assesterebbe piano piano nel tempo, assumendo un'organizzazione che va poi a rispecchiare quello che è lo stato emotivo della persona. Non è un caso che persone che presentano disordini di tipo psichiatrico e neurologico poi siano accompagnate anche da alterazione del movimento. Arriviamo quindi a quelle che sono le conclusioni, dicendo che il metasistema PNEI è un metasistema all'interno del quale la psiche è parte integrante del meccanismo di azione. Quindi in quest'ottica è necessario che tutti in ambito medico incomincino a passare quella che era la visione positivistica che normalmente viene insegnata in università, siamo in corporee, è necessario essere scienziati bilingue, capaci appunto di poter parlare un linguaggio specifico nel nostro contesto e un linguaggio internazionale che ci permetta di confrontarsi con tutti gli altri professionisti nell'ambito sanitario, per cercare di abbattere quelle che sono le barriere che ogni singola disciplina va a costruire. Quindi, sempre in relazione al corpo, non bisogna considerare la postura soltanto da un punto di vista biomeccanico. Bisogna introdurre un modello fasciale legato a tutto il concetto della tensibilità fasciale, che oggi chiaramente non è possibile andare a spiegare, per arrivare a un modello integrato PNEI, dove i sistemi fisiologici influenzano la struttura e la postura del corpo e dove la postura del corpo e la struttura del nostro organismo va a influenzare i sistemi fisiologici. Concluderei con questa bellissima frase di Augusto Rodin: il corpo è lo stampo su cui si imprimono le emozioni. Bene, detto questo, io vi ringrazio, vi saluto, spero che la cosa sia stata interessante per voi e se ci sarà un'altra occasione ci rivedremo volentieri.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that it's not enough to listen once this kind of things, and this is really a lectures, and really we thank Nicola Barsotti for that. He will be not with us this afternoon, but MIBES Academy is present today with us, and so among our special guests, there is also Marco Chiera that now you see. Ciao Marco. Thank you to be here with us. He also was accepted to be interviewed, and so he recorded in a December webinar a short video explaining to us what MIBES Academy is and how it works. And today you are here representing MIBES Academy, and so you will take part in our conversation. Thank you to be here with us. So going back to this first recording, surely there is much stuff in this recording, but we need just to focalize a few concepts on which we can debate. So the first is that human complexity. Human complexity is the base of this need to transform our way of thinking health, thinking also our practice as healthcare practitioners. Stress is another key word, because stress is the region who, from the scientifically part of view, is allow us to study scientifically how we activate as a whole body, not only with parts, not only with endocrine or mental or immune, but all works together constantly. And stress is the origin that on which is based any other talking about depression. So I think that we have many things to link with stress activations. And the third concept is about how Nicola defined this paradigm, a molecular-based system paradigm. That maybe could sound a little bit reducing the concept, but it's not, because in this molecular-based include also psyche, any expression of the body, such as movement. So also another concept. So at the first round, the first very easy round, 30 seconds replies. What kind is there anything that particularly intrigued you while listening this video? I don't know, who of you are present want?
I was, over the last months, I've been reading the conferences that Moshe Feldenkrais gave in Tel Aviv in the beginning of the 60s, in the third year of the psychology trainings, explaining his work over a semester. It's exactly the same. I'm sorry to say, but he's already explaining this kind of model, and that we have to be aware of that. And that, of course, he says, my neighbors in the medical world do not understand what I'm talking about, but one day they will.
So many decades have passed, and we are still here, and the One Health model has just published. So, Sandra, what do you reply?
Yeah, just building on what Ivo has been saying, I think indeed already many years ago we understand, let's say, the systems biology complexity which has been given there. And I think also in the video, he touched very briefly on the exposome. So a part that you have seen, I'm as a training also an engineer biotech, but a big part of my career, I was also a toxicologist. And so the exposome concept comes from the bridging of toxicology and occupational health. So besides, let's say, the interlinkage at the systems biology point of view, like we see also PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunology, especially in this session, you say evolving paradigms in health, prevention, and care. We go even broader. So we have now, the exposome was already looking a little bit to all these external stressors which interact with internal stressors, and how actually our own body interacts with the different parts of the body. But now we see more, and in our environome concept, which is a new evolving paradigm in health, we see also the importance of, let's say, your personal environome, your social environome, the built environome, the digital environome, and the natural environome. So in a One Health concept, we start to see that the whole system gets wider and wider, and it can impact, and even more, that each and every person is unique. This was something which was not touched upon, but we have all our individual fragilities, and that's quite important. And I think on that base, I think there are really evolving new paradigms in health, prevention, and care, which have a bit to bridge all this complexity. And I think that's, let's say, building on these concepts that you started. And indeed, Feldenkrais was already a physicist, and he started to go transdisciplinary. So there we're going right, because we have to put a lot of disciplines together to come to this overall complexity, also in prevention, treatment, and care, and response to, complex trauma that he has been also explaining. So very interesting, obviously, to see an overview of the history. And Thomas Kuhn is also somebody that we have been touching on in some of our activities related to our GRC work. So,
yeah, I would like to ask you also, why so long? If Moshe Feldenkrais was talking about it in 60s, and we are still now conceptualizing this word, why, in your opinion, we need so long time to formalize, to conceptualize, and to share this paradigm?
Well, I want to come there from another angle. At the European Commission, we just issued formally, let's say, a new advisory document from our scientific advisory mechanism on One Health governance, but it's about governance. But the One Health concept exists much longer. And I think also the area I've been focusing a big part of my, I mean, it's now over 30 years of research career is already systems biology. But often things are happening in different parts of, you know, the different disciplines. And I think what is happening now more and more is that specific specialist areas start to talk to each other. You have done that also in your project. You have tried to bring the Feldenkrais community with the more clinical communities. We have been working on adverse outcome pathways, bringing medical doctors more in a systems biology approach of thinking. So what I think is now happening, which is, let's say, this paradigm, is that we go from disaggregated specialist areas, which you have seen also in medicine. You know, if you have that problem, you go there. If you go there, and at a certain point, you have to go to 15 specialists, you know, and the whole problem is interconnected with the cause, where you need really to put all these pieces together. So I think more and more we start to understand that we have to reintegrate all that knowledge and start to speak to each other, but also to learn the same language a bit, or at least languages that we start to have respect for each other in our diversity, but also that things are coming together in a way to explain much better complex trauma, disease, chronic pain in a more realistic way, and also to understand how we better can go to prevention, care, and treatment. So I think that is the revolution which is now happening. And also at the hospital, although that some hospitals say we work with multidisciplinary teams, but in practice often they treat only a part of the problem, and not always it is put together. So I think that is really what is happening now. So that's very positive. And I think your project also started to do that very well. And you did much more also.
Thank you. Yes, I think that now probably the time is ripe also for this kind of communities, such as Feldenkrais community or other communities linked to somatic disciplines. Time is ripe now to try to open this kind of dialogues and interconnections. Yeah, that's true. But I entitled this blog From Concept to Practice because I think that paradigms and models are important to be able to imagine. If you can imagine something, then you can really realize it. But as soon as when you talk about integrative medicine, what is it? Oh, yes, it sounds nice, but what is inside? How it affects my way of work as Feldenkrais practitioners or somatic practitioners? How does it affect? In which way? Practically. So this kind of imagination has to be also developed. Otherwise, Feldenkrais also said, if you don't imagine, you don't do. And before him, Jules Verne said the same thing. Humankind can reach what they can imagine. And nothing else. So it allows me now this consideration to bring this conversation to another important aspect, how to transform concept to practice. And MIBES Academy and Feldenkrais educations allows us to understand a little bit better what we could do really to support these transformations in people, because then health and healthcare is made up of people working on that. So I would start with this question to you. So to what extent your platform, your initiative support these kind of transformations and this paradigm shift? Can you tell us something about your ideas?
I want to tell you a funny story before we start, because I think it's interesting. A week ago, I was interviewed. I had to go in the studio for French national television, and they wanted to do a show around a morning show. There's almost 1 million people watching that kind of show. And they want to do a show about how movement can help for pain, and more specifically chronic pain. So they asked whether I could talk about the Feldenkrais method. And then they did screenings. They did many interviews with me. And they said, okay, you can come in studio, but it's only 4.5 minutes that you have. Okay. And then they said, but you first have to explain where this funny name comes from. So that was the first thing. I had to explain where Feldenkrais came from. That was the first thing. Then I had to also do a demonstration live. And they say you have 45 seconds to do this demonstration. I say, okay, I'll do something, that bird, these kind of things. No. I had to be on the floor on a mat. I said, it takes a lot of time. No. Okay, let's do that then. Let's try. I said, give me 1 minute and 10 seconds. So I got some seconds more. And then the day before they said, oh, it's all arranged. We've got 3 mats. We got the anchor that will do the thing on the floor. And then we have somebody with a double hernia, and she can do it as well. And so you can heal her. This is the kind of thinking that goes behind it. Needless to say that I didn't have time to explain the Feldenkrais method. I just had to explain the funny name. And one of the elements that was for us important in the project that we did was this whole thing about communication. How can we communicate this method? If we talk in generalized terms, we will have generalized answers, and people don't feel that we really talk to them. No?
Can we have the slides?
Maybe.
Yes, so we have some few slides from them, and now we will show you so they can complete the reply before asking Marco about his.
Do we have the slides up?
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
So how to make Feldenkrais visible? Rebranding Feldenkrais for specific domains. I think it lacks batteries, maybe. So the elusive mistake that we make in the Feldenkrais world is that when we want to market, when we want to communicate about the Feldenkrais work, we go to a marketeer and we say, he asks us, which is your target group? And we will say, everybody. And so we communicate to everybody. And if we communicate to everybody, we touch nobody. So we have a real problem of invisibility there. So the initiative of the 12 weeks was, how can we organize an event that we can specifically talk to certain target groups, that they feel, oh, somebody's talking to me. How is that possible? So we stopped asking what is Feldenkrais, but what can the Feldenkrais method do for me? And we put out 12 different domains of where the Feldenkrais method is active. There's much more, but we focused on these domains. Maybe you can.
Yeah. So technically how this took place is that I drove for about 3 months once we had pinpointed all of these practitioners, experts that we decided to interview. We're on the European map, and I drove from one place to the next to film interviews, to hear them talk about how they adapted the Feldenkrais method to their domains, but also to actually film them working so we could get a real life proof of how this work actually looks like. So we wanted to share a bit some of the big insights that we had from this project. And one of the biggest things that all the practitioners and experts we talked to was the need they had to adapt the language. And Lorenza talked about it also with people in the medical domain. We need to change the language we use depending on the audience. So we took the example of athletes. If you talk to athletes in the sports world, there's a specific language that's used to talk about movement, to talk about performance, and so on. So if we use a language which is the one we are used to in the Feldenkrais method to talk about softness and well-being, or sensing yourself, softening, athletes will close the door and never call you again. And so in that context, it's better to talk about efficiency, power, flow state, proportionality. I mean, these are just some of the examples, but there's a very strong need to adapt the language that you use. And this is something we saw in all of the domains. And this is something that all the experts were very, very able to do because of their pre-existing background in those fields. You want to talk about the second insight?
Yeah, but this is the same thing for our work, the ATMs and FIs we do. We have to adapt. One of the things that came out of this 12 weeks as well, the event, and the 40 experts we talked to, is that they don't give 45-minute ATMs. They adapt. They adapt their strategies, the neurosomatic strategies we use. A typical example is working with people who are diagnosed with Parkinson. We are used to work slow, and we initiate slow movements and small movements. They will trigger tremors, and they will tremor freezing if we do that. So we have to adapt and rely on rhythm, pace, and momentum instead of this extreme slowness. And so for every different person, that we have to adapt this Feldenkrais method the way we learned it maybe in our trainings.
So maybe we took some time to also reflect on what came out of this, some concrete outcomes. So we had 10,000 participants who signed up to follow the live events, conferences, and documentaries. We also noticed that different domains attracted new audiences that we hadn't noticed before, which we saw in the email contacts we had, online Zoom comments, or on YouTube and other platforms. There were also local initiatives set up by third parties, people who followed the 12 weeks and decided to reorganize the 12 weeks in their communities and invited people from their areas to go through the 12 weeks again. There was a lot of referrals leading to people discovering the method. And it was also interesting to see that one of the themes that we talk about, chronic pain, which is a theme of today, was one of the themes that attracted most people. Many students in the trainings and fellow practitioners reporting getting new students and also positions in universities and facilities thanks to the documentaries that they could use as leverage and as a way of explaining them what the methods, how the method works in these domains. And one specific comment that came up again and again is people sharing that they didn't know that Feldenkrais had so many concrete applications. And finally, many practitioners expressed also discovering very specific challenges and opportunities that are specific to each of the domains.
And here's also a message to all our guilds. I mean, a lot of practitioners felt lonely, wrote to us, "Thank you, I don't feel lonely anymore." So I think there's things to organize with the guilds, even if it's online, to talk to and organize local events. So why did it work? Why was it maybe in that way successful? First element maybe is this someone like me effect. But we talked before, somebody's doing martial arts, a kind of Aikido, and you say, hey, they think like me. They move like me. I'm also into that. Can Feldenkrais do something for me? That's amazing. And all these kind of different domains were people recognizing themselves. Then it was show, don't tell. We really showed how the improvements were direct and clear. even with the horse that changes its posture, no? Even with a swimmer that refines its technical movements and immediately goes into the water, a singer's voice that doubles sometimes in volume. Another element was borrowing authority. We would stand as practitioners next to giants, maybe an Olympic swimmer that won a medal at the last Olympic Games, and really said that through the Feldenkrais method, doubled his volume of air that he could take in, or we would be a performer, a very well-known performer, a dancer that was very well-known. There was also a low threshold. Everything was for free, at least to see it for the first time, and they could share. It was easy to share. So people could say, families, colleagues, look what I'm doing. This is my work. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner. This is what we do. And students could say, oh, I ask a colleague, I ask a friend. And there was a quality on several levels. It was not only the quality of the conferences that were given every week, also the documentaries that were linked to it, and the level of the classes that were attached 5 days a week in 2 languages to these conferences or documentaries. But more specifically, there was a professional quality of the audiovisual production of these. These were not Zoom sessions. This was qualitative production filmmaking. Maybe you can say something about that.
I mean, this was probably the biggest cost of this whole event, was because we had a whole team of people, sound editors, live editors, multiple cameramen, composers. But we knew how important this was, because in the same way there's a transfer of trust from authority to practitioners, like Ivo pointed out, there's also a transfer of trust when you see something which has a high or a good quality of production, just like an event like this with multiple cameras and so on. This is an important part of presenting and communicating about the method. And so just to finish, we wanted there to be also very tangible assets, permanent tools that would come out of this project. So the first one was this 6-minute animation that was also used on Resources4Life, which was an endeavor of 2 years. And it has now already 55,000 views on YouTube if you combine English, French, and Italian in under a year. So it's continuing to have its effect past the event. And a Chinese version coming out, maybe Finnish as well. And Spanish is also ready now. And we also wanted to make a 1-hour documentary that was summarizing some of the highlights from this 12-week event. And also an online platform, a bit similar to the Resources4Life, where we have masterclasses, online lessons, and all of the documentaries are available there. So it's also a form of a tangible asset that can keep on living. And so if it's okay, we just show a 1-minute teaser from the documentary so people get to see what it actually looks like. Yeah? If I could have a bit of sound on the video. So this is the introduction, the 2-minute introduction to the documentary that you can watch on YouTube if you want to watch the full version.
The Feldenkrais method is a...
Let's bring the volume up a bit. I'll start again. Okay, should be good.
The Feldenkrais method is a unique approach to enhancing abilities through sensorial and motor exploration. Whether through hands-on work or voice-guided lessons, I have identified over 130 different strategies we use to improve movement, refine our senses, and develop our learning skills. These strategies include moving with attention, sensing subtle differences, becoming aware of habitual movement patterns, exploring variations, using motor imagery, and many more. Practitioners around the world are adapting these strategies to fit the needs of their fields, from rehabilitation and the performing arts to athletics and education. To understand this remarkable diversity, we embarked on an international tour and spoke with more than 40 experts, coaches, performers, therapists, and educators, who've all integrated these neurosomatic strategies into their professional lives. From concert halls to clinics, Olympic swimming pools to prison classrooms, we witnessed the same core strategies appearing in very different contexts. This documentary will take you on a journey to discover the wide-ranging applications of the Feldenkrais method and hopefully invites you to discover what it could mean for you.
Thank you really much for this clear summing up of your experience in so few words and with the lessons learned from this project and from this experience you did. I think that now we can really address to Marco Chiera that I keep you as in last position because you started, MIBES Academy started with this lecture. But now I would really like to ask you also if you can comment, give us comments about the MIBES Academy initiative. I remember to everyone who is following us that in December we were able to interview you. And so now there is in our YouTube channel the interviews to Marco, who explains us in details the MIBES Academy initiative. Surely this answer the same need, communicate, because we can't move from a concept to a practice without being able to communicate. And communication is really the main ingredients to setting bridges between different areas. So Marco, it's your turn if you like to comment us and refer us briefly the MIBES Academy initiative.
Thank you, Lorenza, and hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today at this special event. And yes, you are perfectly right. That is, communication is maybe the most essential part of integrative medicine. That is, as what Nicola said before, is not something new as a paradigm. I mean, PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunology, integrative medicine, functional medicine, system biology, call it as you want. The fact is that several subjects, several people, several specialists have to talk to each other. And MIBES Academy, where MIBES stay for integrative medicine, wellness, and health. Sorry, I had to translate from the Italian to English acronym, so I took some time. And the initiative came from exactly for this need. That is, I, Nicola, and many other our colleagues are teachers, and we spend a lot of our time meeting other people that are students or experts with a lot of experience, and we talk to them. We help them realize what is arising, what is emerging in the research of the last decades about integrative medicine. But the problem was that we spent too much time talking about only the theoretical methods, the theoretical subject. We spend too much time talking only about the theoretic part, and we too often had little time available to bring all the paradigm shift into practice. And so we came up with the idea of MIBES Academy. That is, okay, we can record our theoric lessons, and then we can organize live webinars, in presence meeting, lessons, and so on, where we put everything into practice, where we can discuss actively what all PNEI, systemic biology, etc., can be put into practice and improve the standards of healthcare in the end. Moreover, MIBES Academy is an online platform, an e-learning platform, where people can share materials, can create discussion, can keep in touch easily. And this is essential because in integrative medicine, we talk about complexity. Before we said that we are, each one of us is unique, but we need also a lot of time, energy, and resources to keep that in mind, because it is obviously it is easier to come back from a complexity paradigm to a reductionist one. Even when we talk about holistic methods, it is way easier to come back and say, yes, the cause is just psychological, the cause is just regarding posture, or you just need to be more aware of yourself, or. But complexity means that something is unpredictable. Complexity means unpredictability, and that and remind us that thing. I think we think at MIBES Academy is possible only if we continue to talk to each other, if we continue to create occasions, meetings, events, where we can share our experiences. And that was what made us create MIBES Academy. And that is also our mission, what we aim for. And of course, as it has already been said, in the same way, we're all here, except Nicola, talking in English. So we have a common language, a common ground. We think that the scientific language is the common ground for communicating not only among ourselves, but with every kind of healthcare professional. Moreover, there is one thing that I discovered in my personal experience. I started as a naturopathic doctor, and in my education, too often allopathic medicine was viewed as something opposed to us, opposed to what I was taught, and that only because I didn't know nothing about scientific language, about what was going on in scientific research. We didn't know nothing. didn't know anything about scientific literature. And that was our very big problem, because when I started to deepen my knowledge about science from biochemistry, histology, embryology, etc., I realized that what I was taught as a naturopathic doctor was already there. Simply, they used, the scientific community used and use another language. But the attention to everything that is in our biological unit was already there. I just have to study that language. And studying that language allowed me to communicate with everyone from that time till today. Of course, that doesn't mean that I have to erase my professional identity, my language, my tradition as a naturopathic doctor. But I have a very important mean to reach everyone. And as every single cell does in every moment, I have the means to adapt myself to other people. And so to speak easily with people that do not have that much of scientific knowledge. But on the other hand, I can speak entering the molecular-based rationale when I have to talk with physicians, researchers, and so on. So this is what is behind MIBES Academy, at least for today.
Thank you, Marco. I know that this Italian initiative has settled some a few years ago, but is really developing very quickly. And so I really wish both of you, the MIBES Academy and Feldenkrais Education, that this kind of project can really increasing and get increasing more and more in the next future, because we need it. If we want to conclude this first block, how to go from concept to practice, I understand two things. The first, the concept, we should talk much more and learn things about this way of conceptualize new models, because these open our mind, these open our imaginations, that is really fundamental than to be concrete. And on the other, this is more a top-down process, but there is also a transversal process that say communicate. Communication is the base to set up bridges between different or traditionally separated areas. And communication has really the value also not only to promote, but also to educate. And so through this kind of projects, these platforms that you created through MIBES Academy and through Feldenkrais Education really allow us to educate to specific disciplines. And now we are talking about Feldenkrais Method. So we like to say this one. Yeah, please.
Because I was listening to you both, and I must say it was really inspiring to listen to some of your analyses. First of all, let's say the agility you used in adapting to all these different professionals, also with the language. So I feel also on top of, let's say it are the classical terms, communication, education, but what I feel of both of the speeches, also of Midas and of what you're doing, is really a certain agility, an adaptation to listen to the people with lived experience, but also to listen to other types of professional and try to adapt your language, either spoken or even not spoken, because we have to also that we need to understand each other. And especially when I feel in both of your speeches, I mean, I sign my emails, and this is, let's say, you talked about scientific evidence, but I'm talking about feeling science, sometimes intuition, which is not really the data science and the method science, because that's a rational part of our brain. But I think what you both have demonstrated is adaptation also, we just heard that, but also feeling what you do, and especially feeling the others and having respect for other views and trying to connect. So I think we're going also now from concept to practice. It means going from the classical way we educate, because we have seen two of the examples of different way of learning from each other almost, which is not the typical industrial form of education of a teacher, which tells the others, you know, how it should be done. So that is for me, let's say, the evolving paradigm from concept to practice, with these two beautiful examples, you know, at a more national context, but you at a global context. And that was for me very striking. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thinking about the individuals finally.
I see that in our third block, it's really focused on that, communicating this knowledge, not only by words, but also by your intentions. And you have the intention to communicate if you are in a certain autonomic states to do that, to be relational, to be social, to open listening, and also open to speaking. But anyway, now we cope with the second block. And the second block deals with chronic pain and fibromyalgia. Someone said to me, oh, in these events, you don't speak so much about how really Feldenkrais Method helps people suffering from fibromyalgia. You speak a lot, many interventions. So I thought to insert this second block, who explain a little bit better what the scientific researches and studies said about. It's really wrong to say that there is no scientific literature about Feldenkrais method and benefits to this kind of diseases and situations. So the next recording deals with this and is introduced is a recording from Cliff Smyth. He is also a Feldenkrais practitioner. He also teaches in Cyborg University in California. And he also works for AIIMF research group and journal. So he recorded for us some achievement of the scientific. So let's go to the second recording. Few technical issues to solve, but we are soon to you.
With you with a short presentation on the Feldenkrais method and pain research. So here's our agenda for today. Talking about research so far in terms of Feldenkrais fibromyalgia and chronic pain, and also a few observations and directions for research on this topic. Just a quick reminder who I am. The most relevant thing here probably is my teaching in the Department of Mind Body Medicine at Saybrook University. And, you know, I actually include in my movement modalities for wellness class, you know, module on movement and pain. So some of this literature is quite familiar. On the other hand, it was very interesting to reread all the Feldenkrais and pain literature in detail again. So just to start off by saying, 15 years ago, Pat Buchanan and colleagues did some research into practitioners in the United States and asked them what were the main reasons that people came to them in their private practice. And for the number one reason for that, it came out as 62.7% of clients came for pain-related topics, needs. So it's a significant part, an important part of our practice and why practitioners should be informed about issues of pain. So I want to start off, I know there's a particular interest in fibromyalgia, and also just to note that it's not really possible just to like put the results on the screen and I'll give you some context about the study. So this is a little more text than I would normally have on a slide, but it's necessary for you to then understand a little bit about the study, and then you have a context for reading the results and also looking up the research yourself. So starting with Georgie and colleagues in 2023, who looked at ATM for fibromyalgia as a proof of concept study. They measured a lot of things to find out what kinds of things could Feldenkrais influence for people with fibromyalgia. It was a good-sized study with 128 participants and had good retention. So quoting from the study here, actually, there were significant improvements on fibromyalgia-specific measures, particularly the polysymptomatic distress scale, which is a combination of a measure of widespread pain, an index of widespread pain, and the symptom severity. So it's the extent for the person and the intensity for the person. And so it's not a small thing that they got statistically significant results on this measure. And then also significant results on the pain catastrophizing scale. And if we think that pain catastrophizing is really a barrier for helping people cope with their pain and have some hope for the future, then again, this is a really significant result and might speak to some of the psychological effects of Feldenkrais method in terms of self-efficacy and feeling like that there are things they can do and it's not always going to be bad or terrible. As they say at the end, the fibromyalgia-specific measures of pain-related catastrophizing are really a major factor in fibromyalgia-specific measures that it's a significant thing to find in relation to helping people with fibromyalgia. Good. So back in 2001, Kendall et al. Also did a study of fibromyalgia, and that was a very small study with 15 or less participants because at the end of the study, there were only 50% of people left, like 8 people left, and the same 3 months after, and the data collected at 6 months after was only 5 people. So there are major issues with recruitment and retention. And I include this here because it's important to be honest what research is out there. And in addition, it points to when we're looking at what we want to do, we have to think about planning in ways where we can ensure that we retain people, that we get groups of people that are similar. If we're going to have a control group or comparison groups, and in this case they weren't similar. They weren't randomized into the groups. And another puzzling feature of the study was that the pool therapy group got health education about fibromyalgia, but the Feldenkrais group didn't. So that seems really a disparity in terms of measuring things that are similar in order to create a comparison. So interesting study in terms of its limitations, but there it is. It'll show up on databases. Jumping now to chronic lower back pain, CLBP, Paolucci and colleagues did a really good study in 2016. And they had 53 participants put in 2 groups. It was randomized. The measures were blinded, and they did 2 awareness through movements per week. And the study had a 3-month follow-up, so always good to see whether there's sustained results. Interestingly too, they used different measures, a number of measures to measure the pain perception. I think that's always valuable. There's because pain is a self-report, there are many variables about that. Is it the weekly average pain? Is it daily average pain? Is the pain right now? Is it the worst pain that you had in the last week? So using different tools for measuring pain perception can be very helpful. Excuse me, while I get some water. So the Feldenkrais group had reduced pain intensity more quickly than the other group, which I forgot to mention, was the back school, a conventional back school taught in the way that those are in those kinds of programs. So and they also had greater improvements in interoception at the 6-month period. So both groups experienced significant changes in pain and disability, and therefore they concluded that the Feldenkrais method was comparable in its efficacy as the back school. And it's really interesting to remember that sometimes people get disappointed if the Feldenkrais study doesn't come out showing itself much stronger than another control group or comparison group, but it's good to come out the same, similar to existing methods. It suggests that what we have is valid and viable, and also that then, you know, people can choose like different kinds of programs for different populations, different needs. People have different preferences. So getting equal results to another method is not necessarily a problem. It actually speaks to the efficacy of what we're doing. Amadi in 2020 had a study of Feldenkrais compared to core stability exercise in the management of chronic low back pain. Another randomized controlled trial, randomized and blinded. There were the 2 groups with 60 participants altogether, and they measured a range of things. And there were statistically significant differences between the groups for quality of life, interoceptive awareness, and disability that favored the Feldenkrais method compared to the core stability exercise. However, again, both groups had significantly decreased pain on the McGill pain inventory. This is a qualitative study by Oman. Often it's unusual to include qualitative studies in report outs on research. I think if we're thinking about the Feldenkrais method and thinking about devising programs and devising education for practitioners, then the qualitative research can be useful in thinking about those mechanisms of action, about what people get from the method that we then might choose to use particular measures for. So this was 14 women with neck and shoulder pain. They did 10 sessions over 7 weeks. It was a grounded theory study with journals and interviews, participant journals and interviews. And there were themes like the women recognizing the body was involved as well as the mind. But they had increased ability to move without pain, more body awareness, and they feel like they'd reclaimed their ability to move, and they were empowering things like a sense of standing on one's own, a sense of liberation from doing the Feldenkrais, and something about not sacrificing themselves in their lives to things that caused more pain. So they're interesting things that speak to not just the intensity and the disagreeableness of the pain, but also the experience of what changes in people's lives through doing Feldenkrais, people who are in pain. Likewise, Pugh and Williams in 2014 looked at people with chronic low back pain, another qualitative study. It was a convenience sample. So they found people who had completed a course of ATM and had lived with lower back pain for between 2 and 20 years. It was a phenomenological study. They did interviews. And again, there's some interesting themes, right? Before Feldenkrais, there's a restricted movement and restricted activities. Again, this feeling of empowerment, self-awareness of habits and holding patterns that people felt they built a repertoire of movements that they could use that didn't cause pain. And again, this element of a sense of, from Feldenkrais, a sense of a distance from the cultural competition that they felt was contributing to their pain. So they can be very rich for thinking about, like, what are people's experiences of pain and Feldenkrais in relation to pain. Another older study for non-specific pain was Malmgren, Olsen and co. It was a big study with 78 patients, 3 treatment cohorts and a treatment as usual group. And they did measures before at 6 months and 12 months post. And again, interestingly, each of the treatment groups, Feldenkrais, body awareness therapy, and conventional physical therapy, showed significant improvements over time with pain severity, pain interference in people's lives, the sense of life control, and affective disorders, because they had quite a number of psychological measures as well in this study. And then there was even a tendency toward a greater improvement in terms of a sense of control of their lives for the people who were doing Feldenkrais. And they concluded that the body awareness therapy, BAT, and Feldenkrais were a little better than conventional physical therapy in reducing the psychological symptoms of pain. Here we go. More recently, Appleqvist in 2014 had a study with 63 patients with visual impairment, as well as chronic neck and scapular pain. They did 24 awareness for movement lessons over 12 weeks. And there were measures of visual, musculoskeletal, and balance complaints, as well as the SF-36 body pain scale. The patients who did Feldenkrais reported significantly less pain than the control group. I'm sorry, the control group was a no treatment, an untreated control group. So significant pain compared to the people who didn't get any intervention, and including improvements at post-treatment at the end of the study and a 1-year follow-up, but no changes in the SF-36 bodily pain ratings. So there you get some interesting things, like different measures of pain showed up different results, and that's worth reflecting upon in designing research studies. So having looked at the studies now, I felt like there was one of the limitations of the published research trials, I need some more water, is there wasn't many details about the teaching part. There were some measures of some of the biopsychosocial aspects of what goes on in ATM for pain, but not so much what we teach. And yet we know that we often teach biomechanics and effective self-use and self-care principles and self-learning strategies and even education about pain as we teach ATM. So one thing to think about is whether that should be documented as part of our ongoing research into pain, because it's implicit. All the Feldenkrais people know that that's the kind of thing you might include in teaching ATM. You might not, but you might. So probably making that explicit would be good, and identifying what might go into that as well, what's important for practitioners to include in that. Because there's, looking at the research that I get my students to read, successful interventions into chronic pain often involve some element of a health education or a psychoeducational component. And a very famous one is David Butler's Explain Pain program from Australia, where people, if they learn the neuroscience of chronic pain, about pain centralization, for example, the difference between acute and chronic pain, the differences between pain intensity and pain disagreeableness, right? Pain has these two sensory aspects about intensity and disagreeableness that's useful for people sometimes to reflect upon. And the relationship between affects, between emotions and moods and beliefs and the perception of pain, how our feelings affect our pain perception, our feelings in our lives, and our feelings about the pain itself affect our perception of pain. So I think that's worth thinking about as we go forth studying. Some of the studies suggested possible mechanisms of action, the movement organization, sensory awareness and interoception, improvements in functional activities. But it seems to me we could probably, again, do more work in our research studies and our research design to make the mechanisms of action clearer, again, for our understanding of the method and for our practice and teaching of practitioners and our continuing education, and for other people's understanding of the method. So, for example, perceived muscular effort and the role of muscular tension, like circulation, microcirculation, and inflammation, for example, in terms of fibromyalgia. Changes in the autonomic nervous system, stress responses, the HPA axis, and what measures we can use of those kinds of changes, heart rate variability, interleukin 8, various ways of measuring, what's going on in the autonomic nervous system and inflammatory responses. Looking at the control of attention and awareness and how seeing what we can find out about people's learning about that. For example, learning how to direct your attention and awareness through movement may have some significant implications for learning how to direct your attention in relation to pain. There's intrinsic motivation, finding the pleasure in pain, and there's self-efficacy and empowerment and the health locus of control in that sense of I can that people report from doing Feldenkrais. So if our model is a kind of somatic functional one, somatic about the lived experience and bodily self-awareness, and functional in terms of it working through the action system, then what does that mean for how we teach practitioners, how we do our continuing education, what research we do? And for me, one interesting thing I think is the research on trauma and trauma treatment. Trauma is very much associated with chronic pain, and how they're treating trauma. Really, they're very clear that the somatic component is really important. That the motor part, the movement part, and the bodily affective part is really important in treating trauma and understanding the genesis of trauma, and I think pain. And in addition to the mental, cognitive, affective part. So, other frameworks that include cognition, include inflammation and PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunology and cognitive behavioral therapy, are really useful in understanding this. And at the same time, Feldenkrais has this somatic functional grounding, if you like. You know, Feldenkrais himself talked about mind-body unity, not just how the mind affects the body or psychogenic models. Because I would say every pain experience, every emotion, every attitude, you know, the word comes from how we lean into something like a sail into the wind, right? Every pain experience, every emotion, every attitude comes with a particular bodily organization. And Feldenkrais is a great way of helping people change those in ways that they can have less pain and have a better life. So that's it. That's how to contact me. Thank you very much for your time and having me virtually in your event.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. He's not with us today because unfortunately, San Francisco is 12 hours backwards, so it's full night at now. And so he recorded these interventions, and we thank him again a lot. Cliff Smyth, they correct me. So this is the current research, and so we can't say that it doesn't exist. There is a current research, as explained by Cliff, that provides, despite the limitations of this kind of studies, but provide empirical and experiential evidence from Feldenkrais method, and explains how somatic practices such as Feldenkrais can be understood as a systemic interventions that modulate stress, behavior, tissue, and perception, so that when we speak about somatic disciplines, we don't say only body, dealing with body, and that's all. No, we are really dealing with a neurosomatic learning process. So something a little bit more. And talking with you, Ivo, and talking with you, Sandra, you are both saying that this is a big difference. So I start with Sandra because I know that you have to leave us. I'm very sorry but I understand. What barriers still prevent somatic learning from being included in mainstream chronic pain strategies from the point of view of policies that you represent here?
Okay. Of course, I start from, especially since this talk had also a methodological scientific background. So one of the reflections I think we made ourselves together in preparation also of the early December meeting is that often, especially in a Science for Policy Directorate General as GRC, evidence is critical, knowledge is critical to try also to have, let's say, our scientific underpinning knowledge as a feed in new policy areas and implementation. I think now, I don't know, the MIBES colleague, I see him there. So it was really nice to hear from you how science is really necessary for that. So the way you formulate the question, it's like, how can these somatic disciplines be included? Well, again, I would say we need to understand what we understand with the word somatic pain, because again there, and especially with this example, you see that we start to talk, he introduced acute chronic pain, but somatic disciplines, in the word somatic, they originate from a really specific damage to a specific part of the body. Yeah, that is the origin. And these can be bones, these can be joints, these can be, you know, specific aspects. So I think there we have to try to understand how any kind of other pains, and also kind of extended somatic disciplines are very relevant for what has been done already in these type of specific studies, because it's again trying to bring Feldenkrais in more the physical pain area, acknowledging that there is a link with cognitive and neuro disciplines. So how to bring it into more mainstream use? I think for me, the power after December and today, and hearing Ivo and the others speaking, is to really say that Feldenkrais is much more than only treating somatic pain and chronic pain. We talked about it with Ivo, and we saw it also in some of the presentation. Many related health issues have pain, and that impacts other aspects, not only personally that you, for instance, don't sleep well. And sleep has then obviously other issues, but it also affects your family, your ecosystem, it affects your work, it affects really the socio-economic ecosystem of a family. So for introducing that as mainstream applications in the context of policy, it should be also positioned like that. If you target with this type of therapies, you don't only target the somatic pain problem, you start to really impact, you know, first the whole person body, but also its family. Also, so let's say it's coming really, I think that is the strength of it, also from my point of view, to go again away from, okay, it's about chronic somatic pain. No, I see also value of Feldenkrais. We discussed about it, of people who have day and night sinusitis. We have done some things they don't see. So what you also see is what you learned from the somatic, well-designed methodological studies that also published in the literature, you can translate them to other health problems. And that's a way, I think, again, holistically, to go into an integrative healthcare and looking at approaches like this very powerful Feldenkrais that goes beyond what you have been doing now and opening it to even more. I think your example was incredible, because with all the different professionals, and that is for me the way to open it to really a much broader public than those that are classically also seen in the Feldenkrais videos. You know, you have your sportsmen there, you had really you had your children, the One Health angle was there. I saw the photo with the horse, you know, a lot of people, you know, one of the areas that is growing people, you know, we are so human-centric, but these therapies, they can also help, you know, other, you know, living, you know, entities we care for. So it's about bringing this care policy with these therapies to beyond, let's say, what has been done to now. And I must say, your presentation is a very good starting point to start with. So that's a bit my view on going beyond it to implement it. So I'm very grateful, because as you said, I have to go, Lorenza. I'm very grateful to all of you here in the audience that I start to know, let's say, this also multidisciplinary team of therapists, which are, again, not only therapists, psychologists, we have artists there, we have nutritionists amongst the whole community, we have sportsmen. So I think it's a good place to start there. And I will bring that back home. And I hope to be in contact again. It's not the second time in 2 months to do that. So for me, this is a bit the jump that has to be made by the Feldenkrais community, going beyond, you know, somatic diseases.
Thank you, Sandra. Really, thank you so much. So Erasmus Plus program will be happy of us. We were able to do something good in this project. To innovate something. So thank you. And when you have to leave, please do. And yes, when I listened to the presentation by Cliff, I said, oh, we talked about the bilingualism that we should develop. So we should develop a common language. And if I have to read p-value and all the statistical indicators or randomized controlled trials design and so on, I said, oh, we have to really improve our language. Personally, I teach statistics in a very small university institute in Lugano in Switzerland. I would say body-mind university institute because it provides both psychology bachelor and physiotherapist. And I teach statistics there, and I know very well how statistics is really badly seen by the students. So imagine by the Feldenkrais practitioners. But anyway, I wanted to come to you. Again, this thing that when talking with you, preparing this intervention, you said, no, not somatic, but neurosomatic learning process. We are dealing with this. So I would like to ask you how it impacted your way to release and to design trainings for professional. Yes, this one.
So I don't know whether we can get the slide up. Yes, neurosomatic process learning. Where do I start? I start like maybe 10, 12 years ago. I came myself out of an experience with chronic pain, and we set up a work group within Feldenkrais Education because to keep an eye on this emerging field of pain science. So in the last 10, 12 years, we've been gathering everything that came out, everything that was new, everything that was evolving around pain science. And we thought not only about what is going on in this field, but moreover, how can we use this in the Feldenkrais method? And this gave us, maybe you can have the next slide. Here's some of our influences. Cliff talked about the Noy Group in Australia, the work of Alan Gordon on PRT, the work of Howard Schubener about unlearning pain, the work of Mark Lumley on emotional awareness and expression therapy, the works of Alan Langer, Lisa Feldman-Barrett on emotions, and many, many more. We followed up and we tried to see, but what can we do on that level? Maybe the next one. So we know that pain is a danger signal, it's protection, and it's designed to be unignorable. It's terrible. No, when you hit with a hammer on your thumb, it's like, you're not going like, oh. No, it's really painful. So, and your brain says it's not a good idea. This is like tissue damage. And Cliff talked about it earlier on as well. We have to start making differences. And so we can have tissue damage, which we could see as a structural problem. An injury, a fracture, a tumor, an infection, wear and tear that we know so well. All this, the brain can decide, I'm going to send out a pain signal. There's an alert. And there's like 42 different pain centers in the brain that work together to decide, shall I give a pain signal or not? Goes a bit faster than I say this now, but. And then there's another way that pain arrives, which is we call neuroplastic pain, learned pain. It's no structural reason, but there's a nerve pathway pain. It can be activated by fear. We talked a lot about stress and a whole range of triggers that we learned, that our brains learned to construct pain. So most chronic pain is non-structural. And this is a very important factor due to activation of neural circuits in the brain. So if we think about pain, we have to make that difference between structural and non-structural pain. Here's some examples, chronic conditions considered as neuroplastic pain. Chronic neck and back pain, 85% is considered as non-structural pain. Pelvic pain syndromes, 90%. Headaches, 95%. Fibromyalgia, 99%. IBS, 99%. Anxiety, depression, 99%. So again, research suggests that these pain symptoms are have a non-structural cause. I'm going to quickly over one of the models that Howard Schubiner uses to make this clear. So we can have a stress factor or an injury factor which sends out in the brain, can give danger signals. These danger signals in the brain can be translated to certain symptoms: migraine, headaches, pain, anxiety, depression, fatigue, insomnia, all kinds of symptoms, all kinds of pain. They lead to fear. They lead to focus, like rumination, catastrophizing that Cliff talked so much about as well, frustration, fighting against it, trying to fix it. I want to fix this pain. I want to get rid of it. It's not possible that I have these pains. We call it the 6 Fs. This will enhance again your alertness for danger signals, and not for everybody in the same way, because we can be sensitized through life events to be more sensitive to danger signals. This will give more symptoms. This will create more fear, and this is a vicious circle that keeps on going. This is what chronic pain is about. So it's a neural circuitry that's going on. And yes, so we, as Feldenkrais practitioners, we focus here. We don't work on the pain. We work on the fear, the focus, the frustration, the fighting, and the fixing. Now, there's many others that work on that as well, and those are the ones the influences that I mentioned before. There's a lot of research that goes in that direction. Maybe the next one. So we developed a model within this group, what we call neurosomatic process learning. So what is this model about? So we go from a therapeutic to an educational model, because the most of the influences that I talked about are therapeutic models. So we consider again the people who work with this chronic pain as students that are in a learning process. In fact, they're in an unlearning process. It's about unlearning their pain. So the assessment that we do, what we call here assessment, is sometimes also in collaboration with medical doctors about what they tell us. We listen specifically to the story, not their diagnosis. It can be interesting to listen to it, but mostly we listen to how they tell their story. And we can assess then, is this structural or is this a non-structural problem that people come up to us? Second element is education. People need to know what pain is about. And we have created learning sessions for students where they learn what chronic pain is, how it develops, how they sustain it for themselves, which are the different elements that feed it. And so they learn about, they get a kind of pain education. Then there's a lot of experiential work, of course. I come back to what I said earlier on. We work with pain reprocessing therapy, which is kind of interpreting their sensations differently, that their sensations are, they don't need to fear them, that they can have a different interpretation of their sensations. Same with emotions, emotional awareness and expression therapy, proactive meditation, where they work on cognitive processes, and of course, ATM and FI. This is not a linear process. People come into our sessions, and we might do only ATM or only FI or only, and then we combine it. We take parts from the other fields. And again, like was said before, the aim is, of course, finding agency again and self-regulation. So, through self-regulation, sorry. So, there's the 4 circles, which is the cognitive processes that we take care of, that we look at, the interpretation of sensations, how emotions are constructed, and it's all kept up by movement and the way we do with them ATM or FI processes. Don't know, maybe you can have a look at, I just made just a list of everything that the Feldenkrais method can do on its own already for these people, you know. I'm not going to go through all the list. If you are on Zoom, you can always look at it later. I think because it will be recorded, no, shared, yeah. So as you see, there's it's a learning model, and all these elements, whether it's cognitive spillage or creating options or improved thinking process or changing self-image, all are part of this model. If you want to know more about specifically how this all works, there's a conference of an hour, and I have to explain it now in 5 minutes, which is a bit disastrous. But there's a conference of an hour and a half where we explain the model on the platform as well. Maybe that's enough, no? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Now people want to know what this is.
Thank you. I love your way of communication. It's very clear also to me that I heard in this moment, this new content at this very moment. So thank you. And I think that now it's the turn of Marco. And I don't know if you like to comment the things that Ivo showed through the lens of PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunology paradigm. And on the other hand, I would like also to ask you something about the research studies that link the PNEI model, the model, and the chronic pain and fibromyalgia. So they are converging, these 2 questions, if I have to say the truth.
Okay, perfect.
Just a moment that we don't hear you.
Do you hear me now? Do you hear me?
Yes, now exactly. Well,
perfect. I can start. Actually, we have many things in common. For example, when they talk about the NOE group or the research made by Lisa Feldman-Barrett and all the model that was that has been just presented about sensitization, about the response that our organism carries out to protect itself. Those things are central to the integrative medicine paradigm. And this is also because the very central topic when we speak about pain, when we talk about pain, is that pain is an experience, is not something we can find inside our body, inside our organism, inside our cells. This is to say that pain pathways do not exist. We do not have pain receptors or something that can be addressed as pain cells, pain nerves, or pain signals. We do not have any of that. Because pain is like an emotion, is what we live, is the experience we live. What we have in our body are nociceptive pathways, are danger signals, are threat signals, okay? And these signals are managed by every single cell that is present in our body. Not only neural cells, but immune cells, also skin cells. Several nociceptive receptors are present in our skin cells. And so pain as an experience, or described in a more physical way, as a response, starts from the skin, starts from how we put ourselves in relation with the environment we are in. And then all our complexity, PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunology, and add as many words as you want, that brings danger signals and pain response from a peripheral one to a central and global one. That is what we have to have clear when we talk about pain. Because otherwise, if we refer pain as something that can be found in our body, then using the words of Patrick Wall and Ronald Melzack, two of the most important experts ever about pain, we are doing a banalization that has cost a lot of money, energy, lives, and it is one of the reasons we have to face the plague of chronic pain. Okay, because when we see pain as something that it can be found in our body, then we are like a machine. And when a machine is broken, we just have to fix it. So we have just to find the pain receptor that is broken or is just more sensitive, and we have to fix it. Fix it or fix them, of course. And this is the principle that found all the, for example, pharmaceutical research. Think about all the opioids or similar drugs. They aim to turn off how our neurons respond, thinking that pain is just a neural thing. But if pain is a lived experience that we have to make our aim just a bit better, okay? And PsychoNeuroEndocrineImmunology helps us understand how every single cell in our body, how every single organ and system in our body talk to each other for deciding if pain as a response, as an emotion, as an experience is needed or not. That is the key. Because, okay, every single moment, every single cell in our body asks a simple question. Are we in danger, or are we in a safe environment? And to answer this question, cells try to feel what we can. They try to feel the mechanical tension. They try to feel, for example, the blood level of glucose or sodium or potassium or any other substance that can be found in our blood. They try to sense if there is something dangerous, for example, bacterial toxin, okay? But on a higher level, that is the same questions and the same behavior we have in our mind now in this precise moment, unconsciously and consciously. We feel, do we feel safe or do we feel in danger? We are seated well, are we seated well on our chairs, or are we feeling right now some tension, something that isn't quite right? When I take a moment to breathe, or you take a moment to listen to me, in your mind, is your mind calm, or is it flooded by thoughts about work, family, that person I had a problem the other day, etc., etc. All these things put together makes our whole being answer the question, have I to produce pain or not? And based on this, we understand why, especially when we have to face chronic pain, but the same goes with acute pain, we have to look for everything. And scientific literature about fibromyalgia shows this perfectly. There are, for example, several studies where people improve their conditions by improving their nutrition. That is, for example, just to be easy, when they control their glycemia level, okay? Switching from a nutrition rich of high glycemic foods to a nutrition that is that allows a more regulated control of our glucose blood level, often can reduce the pain response that the organism of chronic pain people produce, and so they can feel better. Many other studies regard pain, regard the link between pain and sleep, okay? And that's why, because we, especially in the last decade, we have discovered that during sleep, our lymphatic system works more and works better than when we are awake, or when we suffer from insomnia or other sleep disorders. So there are many studies that are filled with advices about a good sleep hygiene, especially for people suffering from fibromyalgia. And about, okay, not Feldenkrais per se, but exercise or other somatic experiences, okay? There are several studies that point out a particular thing, that is that often more than prescribe exercise to people suffering from chronic pain or fibromyalgia or other conditions, the chosen exercise, that is choosing an activity, a physical activity that makes me feel good, that gives me pleasure, can be way more effective, both in reducing pain or in reducing the leaves disability, and in improving mood of the mood of the people who suffer from chronic pain. And this particular link between pain and pleasure, I think, it is another central point that all the integrative medicine and neuroscience research that has arisen in the last years, in the last decades, point out, help us point out, is that pain and pleasure are two distinct matters. If one simply experiences pain, that doesn't mean that person can, in the same way, easily experience pleasure. Okay? As people learn to experience pain, they have to learn to experience pleasure. So when we are near people with chronic pain, the goal is not to reduce pain, okay? Because if we think about pain and pleasure as a straight line, 0 is neutral, minus 100, minus 10 is the worst pain, and plus 10 is the best pleasure. If a person is at minus 10, my aim should not be to bring the person to 0, because that is simple neutrality. It is enough. It is enough to open the wardrobe and see too many shirts, among which I can't decide which one I want to wear, because due to my pain, to my condition, I do not have enough energy to make that simple choice. And from 0, I return to minus 1, minus 2. So I simply return to pain. On the other hand, if I help people improving their body awareness, their emotional awareness, if I help them relearning that they can feel pleasure in their body, in their mind, then from minus 10, I bring them to 2, 3, plus 5, plus 10 in the best possible scenario. And when I bring people towards pleasure, okay, bad things can happen, but I have resources to help me cope with bad things. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I think that this last concept is really interesting. I'm very sorry that Sandra is not with us any longer, but I will start again the dialogue with her, maybe from this one, because it's like if you cited or putting together what you said, Ivo and you, here there is a strategic roadmap for chronic pain. So the strategic roadmap find 3 ways that you can work on, and probably they are not alternative. They can be considered also jointly. Decrease pain, that is much more offering biological decrease in pain. Unlearn pain and learn pleasure. That's three ways that start from the same point, chronic pain, and can help us.
I just want to add, I think it's exactly what we do also in the work that we're doing. And then also after Feldenkrais lesson, people feel lighter, feel better, experience a kind of pleasure that Marcus says. And when we work with them, when we work on their, or when they have the experience of their self-image getting richer, getting more expanded, they feel pleasure, what that means as well. We also work with them that they develop maybe a new hobby, that they go out running, maybe they go out walking, they go out and find pleasure in any kind of activity that can touch them in any kind of way. So it's not just giving a movement lesson. It's like Marco says, there's a whole environment that is involved. And it's not about taking the pain away, but getting a grip on your life again.
Thank you. I like when the circle is closing and all the things like incastrated puzzles each other in a unique picture. So we have half an hour left, but is it really nice? And for me, it's important for me to introduce you the 3rd block, because if in the first block we gave the systemic map, so the PNEI paradigm, stress biology, complexity, and so on. The 2nd block says us that research give us some scientific basis and says us and show us how Feldenkrais help shifting the system through movement, perception, agency. The 3rd block points out and focus on a specific tool. So voice is really, and co-regulation can be considered specific tools that support the shift. And so I will introduce you the third video from Mathilde Shisko. She's a Polyvagal informed vocal coach, and she accepted our invitation to explain to us how Polyvagal theory can read the role of voice to help us manage this shift. So please,
if you want to make people feel safer, start with the tone of your voice. Our vocal tone, rhythm, pace, and pitch tell the world whether we feel safe or unsafe, connected or disconnected, confident or uncertain. It is the broadcaster of our physiological state and an overlooked natural resource for nervous system regulation and well-being. Polyvagal theory, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, explains why this is true. His theory offers a way of understanding how our nervous system responds to safety, connection, and threat. It explains why our experience is not simply calm versus stressed, but rather a hierarchy of nervous system states that shape how we feel, behave, and connect with others. There are three organizing principles of the theory. The first is the hierarchy of those nervous system states. We have three primary pathways: ventral, our connected, safe, and social state; sympathetic, our mobilized state of action; and dorsal, or our shutdown state. There are blended states we navigate to, but for the purposes of what we're doing here, we're just going to stick with these three for now. The second principle is neuroception, a term coined by Porges to explain what is happening beneath conscious awareness. The nervous system is constantly surveilling the environment, detecting cues of safety or danger all around us, inside us, and between us in order to keep us safe. And lastly, co-regulation, regulating with another. This experience is necessary for survival, as we'll discover as we go along, and an essential ingredient for well-being and the foundation for self-regulation. Clinician, author, and educator and close colleague of Dr. Porges, Deb Dana, says, while we may think our brains are leading the charge, our heart is actually navigating the world. Everything happens in our biology. It shapes our experiences of safety and connection. Experiences of connection widen our lens, while patterns of protection narrow that view. The empowering part of polyvagal theory is that we can influence our nervous system state. Practices involving breath, movement, eye contact, connection, play, and voice can help guide us toward a state that is fitting for the situation and support us in moving between states as the situation changes. These practices become the foundation for nervous system regulation, flexibility, resilience, and connection. Our voices are the barometer of our bodily feelings, a portal into shifting states, and a resource for well-being. While words are important, it is how we say something that matters most, Dr. Porges says. The intonation of our voice is more important to our nervous system in making us accessible than the actual words we use. Our nervous systems detect tone and rhythm before message. The language of safety, trust, and support resides in our voice. It will either welcome or warn, invite connection and play, or signal when we need to be left alone. This is true for us as coaches, clinicians, and practitioners, but also for our clients. When we can begin to understand tone, rhythm, pitch, and patterns of speech, we can potentially identify what is underneath the behavior just by listening to the sound of the voice. Our voice is an integral part of what Porges defines as the social engagement system, an integrated neural network that coordinates the larynx with the muscles of the middle ear, the muscles of the face, the neck, the head, with our heart, lungs, and diaphragm. We have what Porges calls a face-heart connection. He notes, our voice is the broadcaster of our physiological state. We wear our heart on our face and hear it in our voice. How we listen, show emotion on our face, speak and make eye contact is regulated by our breathing and heart rate via the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. So we literally speak from the heart. In healthcare, cultivating a voice that aligns with our heartfelt intentions and offers genuine connection becomes crucial. Sometimes it happens naturally on its own, but at other times, we need to build resources, strategies, and ways of relating to one another that feel more authentic, trusting, and meaningful, and less pushed, rushed, or forced. Awareness of our physiological state is the first step in creating those meaningful, trusted connections and communications. And this awareness can be identified just through the tone of our voice. When our voices offer predictability, stability, familiarity, and consistency, those connections deepen and trust is built or built upon, and progress is made. At any time, our voices need to reflect reassurance, understanding, support, and care, but also be motivating, inspiring, encouraging, and celebratory. And when we truly feel these emotions, and when we're present and in connection, we can honestly hear them in our voice. But as a practitioner, what happens when we're not feeling it? We can't pick up those cues in our own tone of voice. This is a common challenge that gets in the way of us making deeper and more trusted connections. We can use other cues. We can use things like monitoring body temperature, heart rate, muscle tension, breathing rhythms, face and jaw tension, eye gaze, speed of thought, and even the face on our client. Do we notice if something is landing on them, or is there confusion? In these moments, I recommend we use the STOP anagram, S-T-O-P, stop. Take a deep breath, observe, and proceed. And in that moment of observation, what small shift can I make to move me closer to connection? It is better to make one small, real change than to continue with the fake it till you make it approach. Can you adjust your breathing, your posture, your facial muscle tension, or even position in the room? A small change in your physiology will adjust the tone, the rhythm, and prosody of your voice. Taking a moment to realign with your intention and your why can amplify the efficacy of those other shifts. And all of a sudden, we have a much more honest connection. I also suggest replacing thoughts of why is this going sideways to what do I need right now? When we're in our ventral vagal state of safety and connection, our voice feels calm and steady. It has melody and prosody. I like to think of rolling hills rather than New York streets. Our voice sounds and feels connected and accessible, with reflexive changes in volume, pitch, and intonation that support our intention. It is flexible, free, engaging, and in this state, we convey warmth, safety, encouragement, confidence, and optimism. When we move into mobilized sympathetic state of fight and flight, we'll hear it in the voice. It becomes higher, maybe even breathy or strained. It could be aggressive or viewed as aggressive or even monotone due to the limited breath support. As heart rate increases, breathing becomes shallow and rapid, and all of the muscles involved in respiration tighten, including those around the larynx and the airways. And as the pitch rises, the message conveyed is one of nervousness, maybe anxiety, fear, anger, or even warning. When we move down the ladder into the hypo-aroused dorsal vagal state, we tend to withdraw, disconnect, or freeze. And in this state, we might even lose our voice altogether. Access to the brain's language centers is interrupted, making cohesive thought and speech difficult or even impossible. People may later feel shame about not speaking up, but physiologically, it is extremely hard to do so in this survival state. Outside of survival, however, the dorsal voice becomes softer and quieter, supporting intimacy, comfort, and rest, digestion, and restoration. But in our ventral optimal state for connection, we're doing two things simultaneously. We are broadcasting cues of safety and connection to others while helping to regulate our own physiology. When I use my voice to signal safety, empathy, and compassion to another, I can also listen to my own voice. I can tune in to the tone, the rhythm, and the pitch, and allow it to calm my nervous system. Consider the vagus nerve as a river and the larynx as an inlet. And when you use your voice, it's like gently moving water through that inlet. If the flow is smooth and steady, the whole system downstream settles and softens. But if it is rushed and forceful, the water becomes choppy and activated. The larynx is connected to the vagus nerve via accessory nerves. So when we hum, sing, chant, and even speak in lower tones with prolonged exhalations, the vocal vibrations act as a natural vagus nerve stimulator. Vocal practices become a neural natural resource for improving nervous system regulation, resilience, and flexibility. Doing them on a regular basis helps us to cultivate a voice that is natural, expressive, grounded, and connected. Our voice becomes a regulating tool if we consider that regulation is not always about calming down, but rather about having that flexibility to move through the capacity of the nervous system states moment to moment without getting stuck in a survival response, then our voice becomes a resource for agility and resilience. Through subtle shifts in volume, tone, range, and rhythms of our voice, we can guide the autonomic nervous system between states. We do this in two ways. One is by cultivating a vocal practice routine or warm-up that we do daily, incorporating the elements of breath, movement, sound, intention, focus and play. This, although play is focus, this neural exercise becomes the foundation for building safety in our own bodies. And we become our own reliable source for safety, connection, and belonging, because our nervous system loves familiarity and predictability, and a repeatable practice solidifies this notion. Regulation unfolds through rhythm, relationship, and reciprocity. With a little guidance, we can create a whole new routine, or just add sound to a routine we already have. This will dramatically elevate parasympathetic nervous system activity. This full body awareness helps us feel more alive and present. And when we're present, we connect. Now for number two. Like breath, the voice is reflexive, yet with awareness and skill, we can harness its power by intentionally adjusting our tone, pitch, rhythm, and quality, by adjusting our breathing, our muscle tension, the vocal resonance, to better support our intention in the moment. Awareness of our own state helps us to recognize when a shift is needed. Our bodies listen to our voices and vice versa. There are barriers to co-regulation and connection. These include stress, trauma, chronic pain, and conditions such as fibromyalgia. They can be big disruptors of connection. Sound is a release and it should feel good. So when working with populations living with chronic pain, trauma, or conditions, we must begin gently. Adaptations have happened in the body that may restrict breathing, and getting a full breath might be activating. When your body feels supported and your breath isn't rushed or held, the voice has something steady to rest on. A sense of, I'm held enough to let sound happen. Titration and microdosing of the voice work is recommended, ideally in conjunction with the Feldenkrais practitioner. We must find exercises that the nervous system welcomes. Breathwork practices improve diaphragmatic movement. Vocal exercises stimulate the vagus nerve through sound vibration. And longer exhalations, auditory processing, and engagement of the social engagement system supports greater parasympathetic activity. Adding voice to the Feldenkrais method will absolutely amplify its efficacy. The somatic voice. The key is to match tone, pitch, rhythm, shape, and length of sound with the breath and movement for the client. Ideally supported by a practitioner who has laid the foundation for their own voice work by expanding their personal range of resonance through regular practice, all to support co-regulation. So we've looked at an obstacle potentially being an inability to recognize the nervous system state as a challenge for healthcare providers when working with clients, but time is another one. There never seems to be enough of it, or we're racing to the next client. But now we know that the voice is a vagal nerve stimulator. And a minute or two of mindfulness 3 times a day will greatly contribute to improving vagal tone and heart rate variability. It provides moments of connection to self and offers opportunities for us to realign with our own intention. Vocal practices support all of these outcomes. Small practices such as cadence breathing, 5 breaths in and 5 out on sound. In, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ooh. Or the physiological sigh, a double intake followed by a longer exhale on sound. Humming, whistling, and gargling are moments of vocal play or improvisation, such as a kazoo, woo, 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 or even singing your frustrations or celebration of a great session. All of these little vocal play exercises can be woven in to our daily practice. We're not just producing sound, we're feeling it and we're hearing it. Lean in. Being a trusted other for your client matters deeply, and we consistently see better outcomes when these trust bonds are strong. We must be regulated and regulating so we can create meaningful connections with those we care about and serve. Our voice is touch from afar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I appreciated a lot these kind of interventions. And you see, somatic voice, we are not aware, we don't think that it can be really a tool, a regulatory tool. And I can say a potent tool, because I was so curious that in this last week, I taught to my classes, and I decided to try to use the vocal, something with the vocal dynamics. So I proposed to my classes, all my classes, different classes, fibromyalgic, elder people, all classes. I did the same ATM, working on the breathing in different positions. And I added this small element, emission of a vowel, of voice, and listen to how long, where is it vibrating, very few things, but in different position. And I wanted to see what could come out. And at the end of the lessons, I got so highly appreciations. Oh, this was a wonderful lesson. Thank you. And I just added this element without knowing much more. And I said, oh, this is really important. But surely what Mattis says is that if we want to use as a tool, we firstly need to understand very well in ourselves, so in our training. So we have really few minutes left, and I would have 2 questions, one for Marco and one for you. 2 minutes, Marco, to say to us if has MIBES Academy ever introduced this kind of lessons course in its provisions, vocal dynamics? Is already happened in your
something in with some limits in some courses about stress management and with some mindfulness-based stress reduction events.
Okay, thank you. And so the second, you were very concise. So if we have to learn to use, the question for you is how might voice work be meaningfully incorporated in Feldenkrais practice and in neurosomatic process learning?
So in our trainings, you could say we have 3 or 4 different levels. First level is, of course, people who go to a 4-year training start to relate differently to learning processes and also get a different approach of the voice. You will see in the platform, and there's a documentary about an opera singer, one of our alumni, and she explains how this 4 years had a completely different way, an approach, changed her approach to learning how to learn her voice. There's another level which we do is that we invite extracurricular teachers about voice. They come in and they help the students to better use their voice in teaching. Teaching ATM, for instance. And then there's another level that we do is that also we have specific modules, because I think every practitioner here, every practitioner on Zoom must have had one day somebody comes in and says, I want to work on my voice. And then sometimes there's panic. And so we have a specific module on how to work with the voice in ATM and in FI. We can show maybe a last concrete 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes and a half excerpt about how this concretely works in rehabilitation, in voice rehabilitation.
Sounds.
So it's the work of a speech therapist called AIIMF. That's her name. And she's from Paris. But you can see the full documentary also on our platform.
Okay, one more technical issues before the end of this event. This is the live experience, yes, of course.
Je suis Lorenza, je suis orthophoniste depuis 1981. J'ai beaucoup des personnes qui me sont adressées directement par des phoniatres, c'est-à-dire c'est une spécialité de l'ORL. Ce sont des gens qui sont vraiment formés pour ce qui concerne la voix et qui savent déjà observer correctement les personnes, les écouter et qui savent vraiment bien examiner les cordes vocales parce qu'un simple ORL, souvent, on a des examens qui sont incomplets, voire avec des diagnostics erronés. Donc très souvent, depuis que je suis spécialisée et que le bouche à oreille a fonctionné, etc., c'est des médecins ORL phoniatres qui m'adressent des patients. Et des patients qui, à un moment de leur vie, vont avoir tout d'un coup une difficulté vocale ou alors des difficultés vocales répétées. Ça peut aller d'une simple distorsion, une simple fatigue vocale commençante à des aphonies complètes. Voilà, il y a toute une gamme de pathologies qu'on peut rencontrer avec une altération des cordes vocales ou pas. Donc en France, les soins sont remboursés par la Sécurité sociale. Ils viennent sur prescription médicale, toujours. Et on a une relative liberté de ce qu'on peut faire et des moyens qu'on met en place. Et puis, on descend encore d'un étage. On va cette fois vers le larynx. Les 10 premières séances, c'est du Feldenkrais pur. Il n'y a que sur les dernières séances que je passe à autre chose. Vraiment les fins de rééducation. Mais avec ma formation d'orthophoniste et avec mon expérience qui m'est propre, mais avec ce regard-là. Et aussi en tête, je sais sur quoi on travaille, les niveaux sur lesquels on va travailler, les effets que ça peut avoir ou pas. On va rester un petit peu plus longtemps sur le M.
C'est parfait sur le tapis. En vrai, je ne sais pas si je reproduirais ça.
Mais en vrai, vous ne reproduisez rien. En vrai, vous avez emmagasiné tout plein de patterns ou de schémas et de sensations, et votre cerveau est beaucoup plus malin que ça. Il va aller piocher ce qui est le plus efficace. Et on n'est pas du tout en train de réfléchir à tout ce qu'on fait. Hein, on serait complètement maboule et complètement paralysé, en fait. On sait très bien que dans les pathologies vocales, il y a un aspect stress ou un aspect tension interne qui est très, très important. Et que la première recommandation dans les recommandations pour la rééducation ou le travail vocal, c'est souvent la relaxation. Or, ce qu'on fait avec le Feldenkrais, on fait du tout en un finalement, parce qu'on a des effets de relaxation, mais en cours de route, on travaille plein de fonctions, plein de parties du corps qui sont utiles pour le geste vocal. Donc, on a une sorte de tout en un comme ça. C'est-à-dire, on fait descendre les niveaux, j'appelle ça descendre les niveaux, et puis en même temps, on a exploré, travaillé, remis de l'eau au moulin, mis en place des nouveaux patterns neuromoteurs, mis en place surtout des récepteurs kinesthésiques, sensoriels, voilà.
Le travail qu'on a fait tous les détournements.
Oui.
Diminue la pression.
Diminue les niveaux de tension.
Ah, d'accord.
Ou alors, en tout cas, essaye d'harmoniser et d'ajuster qu'est-ce qui doit se mettre en marche et qu'est-ce qui doit se relâcher dans n'importe quel mouvement. On est vraiment, avec le Feldenkrais, c'est vraiment ce qu'on fait. On est vraiment en train tout le temps de chercher le juste effort au bon endroit, etc. Tout le temps, tout le temps. On va travailler sur l'économie, beaucoup. C'est ni trop, ni pas assez. On est vraiment dans un entre-deux. Et on le travaille quelquefois avec des gestes beaucoup plus globaux qui vont moins concerner le geste vocal directement. Et on va avoir une transposition dans le geste vocal qui marche très, très bien. Sauf quand on a affaire à des difficultés où il va y avoir soit une très grosse difficulté sur le plan anatomique et pathologique, hein, ça peut arriver, mais on peut quand même avoir une amélioration et aussi une amélioration de l'image de soi et d'être un peu renarcissisé, de se reconstruire une identité vocale, même avec la difficulté. Et dans d'autres cas, quand on a des difficultés psychologiques ou psychiques ou émotionnelles ou affectives très importantes, qui créent tout un système de défense et qui fait que ça ne va pas évoluer aussi bien que ce qu'on souhaiterait, aussi bien du côté du patient que de moi d'ailleurs. Mais en fait, ce que je trouve aussi et que j'ai tout de suite beaucoup aimé avec la méthode Feldenkrais, c'est que justement, on ne va pas aller travailler directement sur le lieu de symptômes du patient, ce qui est très, très malin. Hein, et ça, on le sait bien dans le Feldenkrais en général. Quelqu'un qui vient avec un problème de voix, c'est complètement idiot de travailler tout de suite sur sa voix et de le faire vocaliser d'emblée. Donc, on va tourner autour. Et sur le plan psychique et psychologique, etc., c'est pareil. On va dérouter en fait l'attention. On va travailler sur l'instrument, en fait, sur la personne, aussi sa disponibilité, son état de présence. Et puis petit à petit, on va y venir. Mais c'est beaucoup plus malin que d'être bille en tête sur la voix.
J'ai trouvé un espace dans ma voix, mais trop satisfaisant, quoi. Juste derrière mon nez, là.
Des résonateurs.
Ouais. Mais ce qui fait que je peux atteindre des notes beaucoup plus hautes sans me faire mal, en fait.
Thank you, Hiba, for having brought with you today these worth videos. They are very clear to explain us things that we have debated today, that we have tried to talk all together about. But now we have come to the end of this event. I thank you, Ivo Mentens, Mattis Appleqvist, Marco Chiera, and Sandra Coecke to have come here with us today and having given us your time. What emerges clearly is that movement, touch, voice, environment, and systemic science are not separate domains. They are different entry points into the same complexity of human health. And our task now is to continue building for bridges, shared language, shared research, shared practices, and shared responsibilities also for resilience across the life course. And so the Feldenkrais4Life project has formally come to the end, yet we have no intention of letting its energy fade. And it leaves us with a really rich legacy of experience, insights, and also internal collaboration and also external collaboration. One that we hope really will serve as a springboard for new initiative that carries this vision forward and deepen the work we began together in this project. So thank you again to have been with us till now of the day, and see you soon to the next initiative. Thank you. Just to remind you that there is a satisfactory questionnaire, and in Zoom you can have the link, I think, and the QR code. Please, it's needful for our European funded project to collect this evaluation of the event. So if you like to answer, to give your response, we will appreciate it a lot. Thank you and bye.